mic. Yeah. All I need is one mic. Yeah. All I need is one mic.
Hey everybody, welcome back to One Mic, where I watch shit so you don't have to. And today I'm here to talk about episode 5 of Disney/Marvel's Hawkeye, entitled Ronin. If you watch my my Succession, Yellow Jackets, or Dexter videos, you saw that I had to move to a different location for those. But as you can see, I'm back in the studio. And happy to be back. I didn't really like recording in my son's room, but had to do what I had to do. But everything's calmed down after a pretty hectic couple of days. So here I am back in the studio ready to talk about this new episode of Hawkeye. Now, far be it for me to gloat, but actually I love the gloat. I told you motherfuckers what was going to happen. I'm patting myself on the back again. I called the Fisk Thing in the first episode, in the first video that covered the first 2 episodes. I called the Fisk Thing, but I don't really look at that as necessarily like a pat on the back for me, just because I felt like the show has not really been heavy-handed with clues about the involvement of Wilson Fisk. It was kind of just me knowing just enough background on the characters to know that Wilson Fisk could likely be a player, and then you throw in the constant references to this mysterious boss. And then you also throw in the rumors that Charlie Cox might be in Spider-Man, which I'm going to see tomorrow. And it kind of just makes sense that might happen. So that was less of I think, recognition from me on catching clues, and kind of just more like I kind of knew that this was a possibility. So their vague clues were enough for me to go, that's got to be Fisk, right? But I'm definitely patting myself on the back for the Eleanor shit, because I said that, I don't know if that was last week or 2 weeks ago, but it was whatever episode where Eleanor asked Clint to not involve Kate in anything. I think it might have been last week, but she asked him to not involve Kate in anything. And I said, like, that felt to me less like a concerned mother and more like a villain who doesn't want their daughter involved in their business affairs. And as I continued to watch, those things became more evident. And whenever a show or a film really like leans into one hypothesis that they want you to take, which is Jack is the bad guy, whenever they lean in that heavily, it makes me immediately start looking everywhere but there. And the way Eleanor reacted to everything that Kate told her, kind of brushing it off, even though a lot of these things were like pretty clear red flags, is one clue. That conversation was the biggest clue. The conversation with Clint, because like I said it in the video. That's how that conversation felt to me. And then in this episode, they leaned into it even heavier. Like after Kate goes home, after Clint sent her home at the end of the last episode, she comes in crying. And I'm gonna say right now, in my list of things that I liked, I really liked this scene. This is what you get when you bring a Haley Steinfeld into the MCU. You can get this kind of like high level acting, and they did a good job building up in the 4 episodes prior why Kate would want to be a superhero so bad, idolizing somebody like Clint after seeing what happened in the Battle of New York and how Clint was involved and how he saved her and all that kind of stuff, inadvertently saved her. They did a good job of building Clint up and building heroism up for us as it pertains to Kate. So because of that and her interactions with Clint throughout this show, it makes sense that she would be devastated that he would kind of like, send her home like a little kid. And I thought that was a scene that was earned, and I felt like Haley Steinfeld did a great job of selling it. So I thought that was a great scene. But in the following scene, when I think when Eleanor's like cleaning her wounds or whatever, it felt to me again like relief that like Kate was out of her business, as opposed to relief that her daughter was safe. And it's one of those things, it's kind of hard to say like pinpoint like this is where you see it. But like Vera did a lot with facial expressions, and I'm still trying to figure out if I like it or don't, because I feel like she did kind of ruin the reveal by, it's like body language and facial expressions that showed me less parental relief and love, and more like strategy almost. Like it didn't even feel like genuine mother-daughter reactions. It almost kind of felt like relief that, like, oh boy, I thought I was going to have to kill you for a minute. like she was like really grateful that her daughter was not going to be in her sights. And it just came off to me like that. And I think there was another scene later in the episode where it came off to me. Oh, when she says that, when we see Jack getting arrested. So we see Jack getting arrested. He's like, somebody must have framed me. I don't know anybody named Sloan except this girl I dated. And Kate hugs her and she says she's sorry. And Eleanor says something to the effect of like, I looked into what you said and you were right. And I don't know. I just, in that moment, and I have this in my notes. If I wasn't, if I could show you, I would, but my notes are in my phone. I'm recording this in my phone. But I put in my notes, I bet Jack's telling the truth and he is being framed, but he's being framed by Eleanor. Like, there was just something about it that, like, I don't know. It's really hard to pinpoint, but it was just body language and facial expressions. Like, she seemed so dishonest, and it felt like she knew all of these things already and didn't want Kate involved, as opposed to hearing new information and refusing to listen. So, like, I think that's kind of what the vibe that I've been getting from Vera as far as how she's playing Eleanor. So in that scene, I thought, I bet he doesn't know about Sloan, and I bet, they found all this evidence that Sloan Limited is run by Jack, and they're like a laundering operation for Fisk, and I bet Eleanor is playing him this whole time. Like, we've been thinking Jack's the bad guy, but Eleanor probably put Jack's name on there unbeknownst to him. He says he's being framed, and it sounds ridiculous, but he is being framed, and he's probably being framed by his. Are they married? I don't know. I can't remember, but I don't know. It was so kind of like obvious to me that when they revealed it wasn't a big deal. But I do kind of like how they got there, and I do ultimately like the idea of Vera Farmiga playing Eleanor kind of like as a unwitting victim. But in reality, she's kind of just playing a trick on everyone else around her, including the audience, us. So I thought that was kind of good. But a couple other things I liked about this episode. I like the opening sequence with Yelena, because at the start of that sequence, and that was a nice cold open, by the way, because I thought at the beginning of this scene, why do I need to see this? Because we're seeing Yelena trying to administer this antidote on a Black Widow that she's found or whatever, and she finds out like, oh no, this person actually isn't brainwashed. She just made a lot of money from killing motherfuckers, and I'm thinking like, why am I seeing this? Like, I'm like, do I need this right now? And then she goes into the bathroom at the mention of Natasha, and then like how they played it from a different perspective, which I again, this is the second time they've done this now, where they've shown me something that I already recognize, but just different, from a different perspective, with the Hawkeye thing in episode 1, and then a different experience for the blip in this episode. So I like the idea of seeing her, turn to whatever that was, we'll call it ash, kind of like turn to ash and then instantly return back in a different bathroom and kind of walk out like, what just happened? Whereas like up to this point, I kind of felt like those who experienced the blip felt some sort of absence of time. Like it wasn't like an instantaneous, like I'm gone and I'm back, and it's like, oh wait, it's been 5 years, like on Manifest or something like that. Because of the fact that when Spider-Man comes back in Endgame, he comes up to Tony and he's like, I passed out, and remember when I turned to dust and then I passed out, and I must have been gone a while, because when I woke up, Doctor Strange was there and he told me it'd been 5 years. He started doing the finger thing, like that made me feel like they felt the passage of time in some way, because if Doctor Strange is there before they return to say it's been 5 years, I feel like there's some kind of way he would know that time had passed. But that's Doctor Strange, and we're talking about Yelena, so I don't know that for sure. That could be them being a little bit messy with the details behind the blip. But either way, I thought visually it looked really cool, and I'm not mad. If that's a little wrinkle where it's like, okay, you could kind of sort of interpret Peter's experience as experiencing that passage of time, at least to some degree, and you could interpret Yelena's experience as not feeling any passing of time at all, I'm okay with it, just because it's ambiguous enough with Peter for me to not be sure. So I'm okay with it, and I'll take it in exchange for that kind of cool experience of her coming back, the bathroom being different, and then coming out, and the woman's now married and got an adopted kid, and and the idea of thinking like I went in the bathroom and I came back and I lost 5 years. So I thought that was a really good cold open for the show. I already talked about the other scene that I liked, which was when Kate comes back and she's broken about being sent home by Clint. What I didn't like was the conversation between Elena and Kate in Kate's burnt up apartment. I felt like that just really fucked up the tone of the episode. Like I felt like this was a serious episode. Like, okay, we've already dealt with the blip by this point. We've dealt with her crying about being sent home by Clint. We know that it's the second to last episode, so there's going to be a ramping up of the storyline as far as Maya goes. I'm sitting here thinking like we're going to get Fisk any minute. Things are supposed to be like kind of like throttling toward the conclusion and a little bit more serious. And we had just gotten Elena at the end of the last episode, and then this scene felt so goofy. Like it didn't even feel like normally it's like Marvel will interject interesting jokes or interesting moments of a lighthearted nature, but this just felt like a long ass goofy ass comedy scene, and I did not like this for Elena at all. Like I like her more. Like, okay, you can have the sense of humor just like the character, just like all of the characters do. They crack jokes at some point in every movie or whatever, but we just saw her on a kill mission, and the last thing we heard Clint say was like someone has hired a Black Widow, so shit's getting real. We see the cool scene with Elena experiencing the blip prior, and then we come into this scene and she's just like goofy as fuck. Like I did not like that scene at all. I felt like it was a bad move for Elena to be that goofy for that extended of a period of time, and I felt like it fucked up the tone of the show. Because like I like inserting humor randomly. I don't like long drawn out goofy ass scenes that don't fit the rest of the tone of the show or the episode, and that's how that scene felt. Like I just didn't really like that scene. I also think that scene kind of made Elena look kind of dumb. Like it seemed like she was just told that that Ronin, I'm sorry, that Clint was responsible for Natasha's death, and she just bought it. Like, I mean, we know what happened and she doesn't, so that's different. But she was hired to take him out, and she's just like, oh yeah, you're like, oh, he killed Natasha. Oh, he's got to pay. He's a terrible guy. And she might have evidence of all the terrible things he's done, but she's wrong about that. And it sounded like she bought that just off of like third party hearsay. And I don't know. I just had a lot of problems with that. That scene was not a good scene for Elena. I did like the fight between Clint and Maya that happened toward the end. I like the hand-to-hand stuff. Like I said before, I felt like I think it was last week's hand-to-hand fight scene I thought was a little bit lackluster. So I enjoyed this one. And one thing I actually enjoyed too, which you got to look for it, because they cut these things very precisely to make sure that we can't tell the difference between the actor and the stunt performer who's actually doing the fight choreography. And most people are great at this, cutting these things and filming them in a way where during the actual fight scene, the actual fight choreography, you don't get a good look at the person's face. You're more looking at like entire body, stuff like that. And then they show these reaction shots where you see the person's face. And I enjoyed watching that fight scene because I know the actress who plays Maya, in addition to actually being deaf, is also missing, I think, her right leg. I think from the knee down. I don't think it's the whole leg. I think like from the knee down. And there was an interesting moment where she gets knocked down and you see the actor's face like you're supposed to, and the way she gets up, you can tell, like if you're looking for it, you can tell that she has a different way of getting up from her butt than someone who would have had a fully functional leg there. So I thought it was just interesting to kind of like look for clues for that, like look for moments that kind of slip in like that where you can kind of see stuff. It's just me being fucking weird. So like I said, the clues about Eleanor and Fisk like really ramp up in this episode. I think there was even like you had the fat man auto repair, constant mentions of the boss and this man and yada yada yada. What I already said about Eleanor, and it was like I said, I felt like with Fisk, it was more just me kind of reading into it, and they did a lot with the Eleanor reveal. And like I said, I feel like with Vera, I don't know if that's something where it's like I feel like that was a good job of raising doubt, or if it was something where maybe she wanted to hide it a little bit more and didn't. I don't know. I wish I hadn't been able to figure that out, if I'm being perfectly honest. Let's see. So. My final thoughts. This is already actually going on longer than I anticipated. In my notes, I made 2 Batman references. The first was in that shitty conversation I didn't like between Elena and Kate, when Elena like does some like grapple thing and jumps out and falls out of the window. I put in my notes like Elena leaves like Batman, something like that. And then later when Clint goes to meet with Maya, and the tracksuit mafia is like all around in different places at this junkyard, and you see them just like get pulled into the shadows and grappled into the shadows. I'm like, this is some Batman shit. In my notes, I'm like, what were the odds of me mentioning Batman at 2 different times during the course of a Marvel show? And then my other minor thought is, it's dumb, is the guy Kazi that is Maya's right hand man, who she indirectly accused of having been hired to kill her dad or be involved in the killing of her dad. I've been calling him fake Jon Snow in my notes. He just kind of looks like Jon Snow. So all in all, I feel like this episode was solid. It was okay, good, not great. But I think that also a lot of the apathy, I guess, for me toward the episode is because neither of the big reveals were a surprise to me. So I feel like if you take the things that I did like, the Kate scene where she was crying, the cold open, some of the fight choreography, take some of that stuff and you add in the surprise of a Wilson Fisk reveal and of Eleanor's reveal, then you probably have the makings of a great episode that someone would say this was a great episode. But for me, I lost the weight of the reveals. But it was still a solid episode. I'd say it was a really good episode if it weren't for that scene with Elena and Kate that was so fucking goofy. Like, if that wasn't there, I would have liked this episode a lot more. But last thing before I wrap this video up, I just want to say, like, if you watched the Netflix shows, Daredevil, Jessica Jones, Luke Cage, any of those, once they all got canceled, I was kind of okay with it. I liked the tone. I liked the shows. I liked the tone of the shows. I felt like they were always way too long, like 13-hour-long episodes for like 7 hours of content. I felt like they dragged a lot of shit out. But when they got canceled, I didn't feel too bad about it. But one thing that I said was that if they ever decide they want to include Daredevil or Wilson Fisk within the films or within any other MCU continuity, they need to still use Charlie Cox and Vincent D'Onofrio. And we have marked off one of those boxes officially. And hopefully tomorrow night, Friday morning, I will be able to get in front of this camera and say that they marked off another one. So I'm so glad that they have the wisdom to say, even though we may not want to continue these shows in this capacity, we have something here with Charlie Cox as Matt Murdock and Vincent D'Onofrio as Wilson Fisk, and they absolutely fucking do. So I'm glad that they're using that, and I cannot wait to see some more of both of those two in anything that they plan on putting them in the future, but particularly Vincent D'Onofrio. That his Kingpin was just, oh man, great stuff. So I will see you guys next week for the finale, and until then, peace.